I'm going to sit down with Stephen Dunbar-Johnson, who is the international president of the New York Times. I know that you have quite an interesting personal journey when it comes to kind of understanding climate issues. You told me previously about a conference you went to. Tell us about that, because I think for someone, we all know the New York Times as to be honest, it's like the pinnacle of climate journalism. I'm a fan. But, it wasn't always like that, and you yourself weren't always on kind of fighting this fight. So tell us your story.
I inherited a conference that had been going on for some time called Oil and Money, a very honestly branded event. The Oil and Money conference was one of the most attended events by all the CEOs of the fossil fuel industry. And it was very profitable. So I would go to this event and I would sit there and listen to all of these guys, and because they were all guys. And I realized that the noise around climate change and the information about climate change was still pretty nascent. But as it was becoming more and more apparent that this was a real issue, I was struck that this conference didn't talk about that at all.
Yeah.
And it then became clear to me that this was a reputational risk for the New York Times, for the Herald Tribune and the New York Times. And so we pulled out of that event. And then I pivoted to, started something called the Global Clean Energy Forum, which I guess was part of a sort of guilt appeasement for the oil and money years. But from there, I began to learn about climate change, what was happening, the science, but also get really quite excited about the opportunities that were emerging in order to combat this. It occurred to me that it was a very smart thing to invest in climate journalism, because not only was that central to our mission as the New York Times, this is the biggest existential threat that we face on this planet, but also that it was something, and that was something that would drive the relevancy of the New York Times to non-American audiences, because it's a global issue.
Climate fatigue is a thing. People turn on the news, it's wildfires every week. It's very hard sometimes to kind of keep up any hope or any kind of action-orientated mindset when that's all we're seeing every week. Tell us about the solutions approach that the New York Times takes, because sometimes in this field, when you hear solutions, people think, oh, solutions, well, is that a bit naive? Is it a bit idealistic? Oh, let's focus on solutions when, forests are burning. How do you make sure that you're balancing, that balancing act is going effectively?
Yeah, I still think we've got quite a long way to go there. We're very aware that so much of the news is around the negative side of things, which particularly for younger readers, that gives them a sense of despair. So we launched something during UN Climate Week last September called the Climate Fix, which is intended to help aggregate all of the journalism that we're doing around solutions in a very pragmatic way, so that people can find it more easily, and also give people clear, concrete examples of solutions that are actually implemented and are working.
Can you give us an example of a story?
It could be a story, let's say, in Arizona, how they're implementing, part of Arizona, a whole electric vehicle only zones. There's a story about geothermal, I think it's in Idaho, where they're using geothermal power to power, and very successfully, economically, creating jobs. We've got a series called 50 Solutions for 50 States. Goes state by state, actually looking tangibly at clear solutions that are working today.
I can't leave you before we ask you just about the US landscape, because we can't ignore that. It's the New York Times, Trump. The word climate, living in the UK, I think the word climate is a lot more divisive, it seems, in the US. Do you think that maybe the solution to engaging people who are not so keen on the word climate is to do the story but just not use the word?
Well, a lot of companies who are very committed to their ESG programs, and ESG is that's a phrase that has become very unfashionable in America. But if you talk to most multinational American companies, they are still very committed to their ESG plans. And they're committed to them, why? Because it makes sense for them from a business perspective. But they've realized that for their customers, for risk assessment and risk abatement, that ESG is a smart business thing.